welcome to Mot Crypto. I'm Luis Acevedo. Malcolm Reese is my co-host, and today we are joined with a special guest. Malcolm, you want to take it over?
Absolutely. My name is Malcolm. As Louise mentioned, I am the co-host of Mot Finance here, and we are joined today with special guest Arvin Khamesh. And Arvin Khamesh, of course, is very prominent as I've come to notice in the crypto community, and with what he does and all his work. I honestly am say that I just first want to say, first and foremost, it's a pleasure to have you here. And secondly, I also want to just delve into the fact that with what you've done, you are a global recognized marketing expert who engages in helping NFT brands and businesses grow their community through social media platforms, in addition to helping them sell out their NFT projects. And that is a huge accomplishment. And I just have to acknowledge that within of itself. So that being the case, I just want to welcome you here to MOT.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys.
Yeah, of course, man. It's a great pleasure to speak with you. I've been watching some of your interviews, and you are a wealth of knowledge. There's a lot to learn, especially about marketing in the NFT space. And I feel that a lot of creatives are going to find your information and your knowledge very useful. So so thank you. So thank you for reaching out, coming on the show. It's going to be a good conversation.
Love it. Let's do it.
Absolutely. So I want to preface before I ask a few questions here. I am more familiar with the traditional market than I am with crypto. So I ask a lot of the questions that I'm about to ask because I'm genuinely curious. And as Luis said, you are definitely a wealth of knowledge. So you're going to have to bear with me here. Okay. So one of my first questions is around with what you do in your field. What initially got you involved into NFT marketing?
Cool. So I was introduced to crypto back in 2016 from a good friend of mine, Nick. He was a 9-to-5er. He invested everything he had, all his saving, and he sold his car, literally everything he had, and just turned it into Bitcoins. And then a few years later, I gave him a call and I asked him, Nick, how's work? And he goes, what work? And so he essentially just like made a lot of money. He started just traveling around the world. And then that was my intro to crypto. So I realized this is a very serious thing. And even though I wasn't involved with crypto back then, I really wanted to just kind of make up for it in the next opportunity that comes along. So October 2021, at this point, I've worked with a lot of public companies for their investor relationship marketing, essentially just finding short-term and long-term investors online, and so that they would get nurtured and they would invest in the stock of that public company. And then October 2021, there was an artist from Italy. He reached out to me. He wanted to sell out his very, very small collection. And we did it using Twitter ads. And he sold it out in a week. He didn't even have a Discord community. He didn't have a Twitter following that was very large. But we just sold out a very small collection fairly quickly. And to me, that was the beginning of understanding, okay, how NFT marketing works, the Web3 marketing versus Web2. And then also how transferable everything I learned in the in the investor relationship marketing with public companies into the Web3. That month alone is literally the moment I just put out in the world that, I'm doing NFT marketing. I worked with about 100 NFT brands. And then since then, I consulted and also done for you services for about 400 NFT brands.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Yeah. So what do you see like the biggest differences between Web 2 and Web 3 marketing?
Yeah, so this is perfect. Yeah, so this is perfect because a lot of people coming into Web 3 and thinking everything in Web 2 is the same. So everything they've done in Web 2 is just gonna hold true. And a lot of times it's not the case. And this especially happens with really well-known celebrities, the icons, when they have huge following. And I've been on calls with several of them, and they they think just because of their name or just having like everything that they've done to build their following up until now, it's the same. So they can just go into the Web3. They don't need a Discord. They don't need a Twitter following. They can just talk about it on their Instagram, and then people just rush in to buy their NFTs. And there's several actually cases, if someone wants to go and see, of really, really, really large influencers where they could not sell out. And even though, they had millions of followers, right? And so Web 2 and Web 3 are different. There are specific things that people need to do. So for example, building a Discord community, that's just very specific about NFT communities. Maybe in the crypto, it would have been just like, let's say, Telegram, right? But then in the NFT is specifically Discord. There's no way around it. So people have tried to just do it without Discord. Same thing with Twitter. Like, you need to have a following on Twitter. You can't just be like, hey, I'm an artist and I have a following on Instagram, so that's enough. It's just not. And then same thing that goes on with whitelisters. So for people who listening to this don't know what whitelisters are, essentially, if you think of a crypto wallet that gets approved on a smart contract for buying the NFTs at an earlier time, typically at an earlier time than everyone else during the private sale versus a public sale, that's called being whitelisted. Now, there are literally celebrities tried that too. They tried not having any whitelisters. They thought they didn't need it, and it didn't didn't really pan out really well for them. And so there's certain things that, and I'll just also, the way that NFT marketing works, the hype is, even though you think, maybe, again, an influencer with large following, maybe they think they don't need to hype it. They can just talk about things online, and they just talk about what their NFT is, and then everyone will just go and buy it. It doesn't work. They still have to just build up to it. And so typically it takes about 4 to 6 weeks. You build up this community along the way. You build up a lot of value for this community, just showing them, getting them really excited. And then on that day of the mint day, whether it be the private sale and public sale, then they buy. So that form, that flow has to happen. If it doesn't, they don't sell out. And people have tried it, just thinking, well, Web2 wasn't like this. We didn't need to do that. And so those are some of the big differences. And then also I would say the psychology behind like how people buy is also different in Web 2 versus Web 3. So Web 3 is all about, it's just very much about like the investment mentality, right? So people, like everything in the market is really volatile, versus Web 2 wasn't like this. You just go to a store, buy something off the shelf, or just you go online, buy something that you need, and there's no need for hyping it up. There's no need for like going crazy and just like promoting things out of proportion. But Web3 is not like that. And people may think, okay, well, we've seen a lot of NFTs. Why is there still a need for hype? It's just how it works. Like, it's just different than Web2.
Right. And regards to the marketing, are there different marketing tactics for different NFT projects? So, for example, there's the PFPs, which everybody loved this bull run. But then there's other projects that are out there that actually have some more utility. One that comes to my mind, I'm not sure if you've heard it, Hedron, which just basically takes a cryptocurrency that is a proof of stake, and it encapsulates it so you can purchase the staked cryptocurrency called Hex. So it has different utilities. Or you think of something like Gary V's restaurant.
Okay, yeah.
And even the V Friends.
Yeah.
Both of those have utilities. So do you see that there's a different way to market to the different projects, or is it somewhat similar?
I would say so. And the way Gary Vee markets things is very different to most of the projects. So so that's the type of so I think that's actually a really good distinction here, because having a following in NFT versus having it just following in whatever is also very different. So an influencer in NFT has a different pull than an influencer in just, let's say, music. Okay, so that's different. So Gary Vee could get away from not doing some of the things that everyone needs to do, because his following is a lot of them. Like, there are a lot of NFT people. A lot of them are savvy in the NFT investing, very sophisticated people, very sophisticated investors. And so he doesn't have to do everything that like I tell most brands do, just because of just the way his distribution demographic of his following is, right? But most brands, they need to like build their Discord to 3 to 5 times the number of their collection size. The Twitter, they need to be half of the size of the collection, minimum 0.5% engagement rate. As far as whitelist, they need to have like half of the size of the collection size. And then they wanted to mint out like 80 to 90% of their collection. So certain numbers they need to hit. But like Gary doesn't need to do that. Like also Gary just went for like, I think his We Friends, I own one, but I'm not sure if the number is the case, but I think it's actually 20,000 collection size. So again, that's not, I would not advise to anyone do that because they're not well known. And that's the thing, it's like sometimes people don't understand this. They're not well known in this NFT industry. They don't have the track record for doing things like this. They're not going online on like largest platform everywhere talking about their own NFT. So to say like, hey, they're going to pull at 20,000, that's very strange to the buyer, especially the newbies. They're just going to be worried if they're going to sell out. And you know, smaller collections with like even thousands, sometimes they struggle to sell out. So I think you have a point. It's not the same for everyone. It's not a cookie cutter thing. So that's as far as like people, I guess, NFT type of influencers. And I would say like Gary Vee is an NFT influencer just because how like almost 80% of what he talks about online is just NFT. And so that has changed for him, right? So that's as far as the influencer side of things. And then so now you talked about PFPs. I think PFPs are going to be harder to market at this point because they don't have utilities. And there's like back in November, you could still get away just running some Instagram ads, get some influencers talk about your PFP on YouTube. But now there's just been so many that it's really hard. It's just there's so much noise. Okay. And then so so if someone wants to do a PFP, then they need to go even harder. Like they need to just have like an amazing community, for example. They need to just present their messaging in a different way so that people get excited. Or the art needs to be amazing. You know, if you're gonna just put it on a profile picture and that's it, like the art has to be just world class. And so that's as far as those kind of projects. And then the projects that have utilities, I found that if they just find a utility that they actually can deliver and they want to deliver for long also, that's important as well. Sometimes they're just thinking about it and that they want to just deliver it all the way to maybe right after they sell out, maybe for a month or two, but they don't want to do it anymore. So even the staking you're talking about, so that's not an easy thing to maintain. I know projects that they've done it for a few months and they're like, this is crazy. Like we keep having to put money into this pool. And then if you don't manage it, if you're not on Discord for a few days, everything drops. So it's important to also figure out what kind of utility they really like to do. They have a strength. And then if they do, the marketing for those kind of projects is really just figuring out in a simple way, telling people what that is. So for example, San Vegas Casino Club, we said, you can be the house always wins. And the utility was that, so it's San Vegas is a casino in the metaverse. And then what people would get was that 50% of the profit of the casino, the virtual casino, was going to be distributed amongst the NFT holders. And so when we said you can be the house always wins, that was just very clearly communicated to people. They could quickly figure out, okay, this is what this NFT is about. I'm going to get some passive income every month, right? And so very easy for people to just make a decision, be like, hey, I'm interested. I want to at least join the Discord. At least I'm going to become the whitelister and just check it out for next few weeks, see if I want to join. So you have a point. Every project, just based on like what they're like, they have their own ways of doing things. Some projects, for example, Woman of Crypto, World of Woman, these are like more of they have a cultural reference. So they really got to go hard on those things for their marketing, right? So every project has its own thing, and then they just need to double down on their strength.
Right. And, you touched on a really important thing because I have made NFTs during the beginning of this bull run. because I was very interested in how, it just worked. Like, how do you go through the process of making an NFT? And I will tell you, there's a big misconception out there, especially with people who are just hearing about NFTs and just getting into it in crypto, this whole space. Because it seems like in crypto, every bull run, we bring in a new class of people into crypto. So like this class of people, a lot of them, I feel, had this misconception that NFTs were an easy money grab. Let me tell you, I've made a few NFTs and I've only sold 2 of them for like $10. So it's not a quick money grab. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and it's a lot more complicated than people think it is. And you've actually worked behind the scenes and helped some big projects. So could you maybe go into, that process, the behind the scenes, the kind of work that it entails to make a successful project?
100%. And I think to this day, I still get offers like that where people say like, hey, we just want to do this as a side thing. I'm like, this is not a side thing. This is not at all a side hustle. This is not like literally this is a full-time, a commitment for people who want to get into this. And actually it scares me when people say it's almost like disrespectful to everyone in the community to say, hey, like, I'm so like cool that like I just want to do this as a side hustle, right? And so first of all, it's also just like a red flag for people who say that, just because this is, again, the concept of I'm going to do this to see what happens doesn't work for building a huge community around your project to invest in you and also your project long term. And so you can't just say, hey, I'm just going to do see what happens, because literally you're getting people to invest in the NFT that you're producing and its utilities for the rest of your life, to be honest. And so like if it's a staking, if it's a play to earn game, you can't just cut it off and just say, well, I'm tired, right? That's not how it works. And actually I've seen that with some of the founders, where all the way to sell out, they were super excited about the project because it only takes like 4 weeks, right? It's only 4 to 6 weeks to build a community and sell out. And then after that, they're just wondering why they did it. Like they don't like the community that they built. They don't like they kind of like their NFT, but like they're just like, don't have a like really close relationship with this community and don't want to be spending all my time with this community, right? So that's what they're thinking. So it's very important to just think of it as a very serious commitment and not something to just build one and then move on to another one and so on and so forth. Because that's what a lot of people do right now too. To just build one and they're like, well, it's less effort to just build another one than just like actually delivering like on your own project and just like building it to the next level, right? So, but going back to a question, like what's actually taking place behind the scenes is so the team typically consists of, well, obviously there's an artist that does the art, and it could be also computer generated. I found that the ones that are not computer generated, the community respects them a lot more, and it's also it's just a lot more I guess it's a lot more of a tight community. Example of that is Frogos, sold out in 7 minutes, and to this date, literally people just go around talking about it and just rib it everywhere they go, and it's just funny, and it's also just really close community, right? Like my sister, literally on the day of the reveal, she calls me and she just talks about this project and the NFT that she got for like half an hour. It's just they're just excited about it, right? And it's all hand drawn, so that makes a huge difference, right? And so it's the artist, it's the developer, so whether it be the website, the contract, so on and so forth. There is a community manager, so typically manages the Discord and Twitter. And then at least the teams that I go work with, then myself, so that where I do the organizing the entire marketing. So as their chief marketing officer, just telling them, hey, this is the direction we're going to go, so on and so forth. Then there's the founder, and typically actually it's not just one. Typically it's just co-founders, a bunch of other people in the team. So everyone literally on a daily basis, they maybe work like maybe 10, 15 hours to be able to pull this NFT project, let's say even like 5,000, 10,000 collection size. So that's what it looks like in real life, where it says like, they may even go on social media and say, hey, we just cranked up some maybe like ads and like brought in some influencers and it was so easy. But like I know, like behind the scene, it's just never been the case. Like it's not just so easy, even those ones that like sell out in 5-7 minutes. So high level, basically what goes on behind the scene is just this team is working on, and sometimes it's a smaller team too, one person doing a bunch of things, but typically that's what it takes. And so it's a team that is building Discord, building Twitter, and building a whitelist following, and then engages this community all the way for 4 to 6 weeks, and doing a lot of things right. So let's say 5 days before, on the day of, few days after, how to do the reveal, how to communicate your pricing, what to do for pricing. Let's say how to communicate your like the reason why people should not list your NFTs, or why people should buy more than 3 NFTs versus like just buying 1 NFT, right? So every little details of things people go through. And again, on the high level, it's just basically building a community, and then getting them excited for investing on the NFT. And then on a specific date, people go on and buy it. So that's really like what it is on the high level.
Yeah, I know that there was a couple projects that I got into during this bull run that gave you an incentive to purchase more than one of their NFTs.
Yes.
And that's because you were able to make a new collective NFT, like a unique NFT rather, or something that got different properties, something like that. So, that's pretty interesting. And then the other thing that I was kind of curious about is, from an insider perspective, what do you look for in a project to help out? Because, it'd probably be easy to just take everybody, but then that could tarnish your reputation if you're getting caught up with a bunch of rug pulls and scammers. So how do you differentiate between a good project, bad project?
That was actually going to be one of my questions.
Cool. Yeah. So fortunately, out of the 400 or so projects, only 2 of them have been a rug pull. So that's unfortunate that they have been a rug pull at all, but fortunately, it's not a lot. It's actually very few. And so initially I didn't know what to look for. Honestly, initially I came from Web 2 as well, right? So I didn't know better, and I was just buying and selling NFTs myself. But that was my extent of like knowledge, right? Versus now I kind of have an idea where people show me the roadmap, how fleshed out that is. When people tell me about what they're planning on to do after the sellout, like how much they've thought about it. So those are like little things that is just very obvious to another person who's just like talking with the team. And also I think biggest thing for me, and the reason I think I've had, I would say, successfully managed to just be with projects that are really like have good faith in the community and they want to put something good forward, is I just really pay attention to communication, like how they communicate. So a lot of times people find me from like DMing me on different places, and through DMs, like in, I would say 2-3 DMs, I can get a really quick understanding of like how this guy or this girl, like they operate on a personal level with people. And then typically, and I'm sure like I'll leave a lot of money on the table. Sometimes I misjudge people, and it sucks, but typically the way people do one thing is the way they do everything. And so if I send them something and they don't read it, they're trying to like cut corners. Or if I if I ask them something, they're trying to just like not answer it, or certain things where it's like, if you're not straight with someone like who is just trying to help you, typically there's some problem going on in the team, right? So or like how they're envisioning things pan out. So those are some things I look for. I would say it's not easy. I still to this date sometimes, especially because of my relationship that I have with platforms like Twitter, Reddit, Google, Meta, where I actually help people, whether it be it like get their blue check marks, or better be it their get their NFT approvals to run ads on these platforms. It's really my relationship that I put forward for these people. So it scares me, to be honest. Sometimes like the brands come in and they ask me to do things for them and just get them these approvals, but then I feel sometimes uncomfortable, right, just doing it, because I'm like, what if it turns out they're like an actual rug pull, right? And it's my relationship. Same thing with influencers as well. So paid ads and paid influencers, like big actually portion of like how we do the marketing. And so with influencers, the same thing. So when I ask an influencer to do, let's say, YouTube video or tweet for a specific brand, typically they don't go too hard on like vetting that project because it's just coming from me. But then that's also scary because if something happens, then it's actually my relationship. So to your point, I've actually been looking a lot about like what are some other ways, I can make sure the project is legit. I don't have a lot of time to like for every single person do like background check or like just go everywhere on the internet, just figure out what they've done in the past. I want to be the marketer, not like detective. But you know what I mean? So, but at the same time, it is like, to your point, it's actually very important. And so I've seen some brands, they coming out that they're trying to expose, rug pulls or expose people who are just in the NFT community, not for good reasons. But unfortunately, some of the like big ones, I've seen that they're actually doing great work. They're just actually with evidence, they're talking about like why specific projects did things in a certain way. But I've seen that like smaller ones, they're trying to gain attention from people. So then they just it just doesn't have the purity that you want to have in like someone who's trying to police the internet, right? So they just say whatever to just get attention, get likes and shares, and then people like just get emotionally involved with them, and then so that's also makes it hard to like just for me to just go into those brands and just say, hey, like, can you like vet them for me? Because everyone has almost like their own self-interest in this, right? But yeah, those are some of the things that are out there. But so far, it's just been mostly just communication for me. Just like pay a ton of attention how people talk and write, and that has been pretty good so far.
Very great. I like to hear that. And one of my questions is, with NFT brands becoming an emerging ecosystem and growing community, do you feel as though public businesses, let's say McDonald's or AMC, will try to adopt and market NFT projects as a means of raising additional revenue? That is, if they haven't already. I only ask this question because, as someone who is familiar with the stock market more than less than cryptocurrency, I assume that one can technically view an NFT as an investment tool, kind of like a certificate of deposit that existing businesses could perhaps leverage, so long as they maintain sole ownership.
100%. And there are many use cases for this. So one is that they just want to actually have NFTs because they want to appeal to the change in the market. And so simply by just saying, hey, we also have an NFT collection, now they're going to get, especially age anywhere from 25 to 49. That demographic is a demographic that they at least becoming familiar with NFTs. So you guys got to bear in mind, like US and Canada, for example, and actually UK, they're pretty behind on what NFTs are. So it's still, most people don't know what NFTs are. Like you can go ask people. Most people, they're just like, is that the thing you can screenshot? Like, you know what I mean? Is that the JPEG, expensive JPEG? So most people don't know. But as far as, companies doing it, so one is just like, they just want to appeal and they just want to be like, hey, we're evolved to the point where we are also doing NFTs, just like all the other companies. And we are also doing what the trend is right now. Okay, so just keeping up with the trend is just one use case alone, and that's actually enough for some brands to just gain loyalty from their fans. Like Adidas, for example, if they don't do it, what happens is just people are just going to be like, well, why is this brand just, or like Nike, like I don't know if Nike's done it, but like certain brands, it's like, hey, your message is like, just do it, and it's like, you're so behind, like, you know what I mean? So they got to stay relevant for themselves. So that's one thing. And also just even like their social media and so on and so forth. If they talk about NFTs, people are going to be interested, actually listening, interacting with them, so on and so forth. So that's, I guess, one use case. Another one is if anyone they can go for themselves right now, go to Decentraland, go to especially Sandbox. They can see a lot of land on Sandbox, for example, has actually been bought by many companies. So Atari has a ton of land. A lot of gaming companies have a ton of land on Sandbox. And I believe a lot of influencers, like large influencers, have a ton of sandbox. But public companies you were talking about, they already have their footing in the virtual world, right? So they have lands, and some already even have talked about like the constructions of like how the new land is going to be used. For example, Walmart, actually, they had something about like the idea of buying like grocery shopping in a virtual land and what that would look like. On October 2021, Mark Zuckerberg, he talked about his metaverse and how the connections. So the concept of like, let's say we are actually looking at each other, like viewing a say screen versus the full-on interactive experience. So just the immersive experience, which is like I would feel what's around me versus just like looking at one focal point. So those are things like that, or like the he calls it like interactive SDK, where like the hand motions or like the facial features, everything just is going to be a thing in this like new metaverse, right? So companies already have talked about this, and I would even say some large companies that everyone knows about. I happen to know that they've already created LinkedIn ads for awareness on NFTs. They haven't rolled it out yet, but they already have it. Like they've actually drafted these, and so basically what they're going to do is just they're going to say, hey, here's what NFTs are, and then say, here's what we're going to do with NFTs. And this will probably happen, I would say, maybe 6 months, 12 months down the line. So it's not too far. And we'll see a lot of brands. I mean, even Uber talked about they want to accept cryptocurrency. They said like it's not right now, but they said like we're actually thinking about it, right? So it's not too far to think a lot of public companies actually getting into it. And so it's just the relevance, and then also they want to have some functionalities, just like utilities of any other NFT projects that we have right now, that these public companies also want to take advantage of. And then this one side of things is SaaS companies. So public companies in the SaaS specifically, they've already been many case studies of SaaS companies being able to sell their software as a service. So for people who don't know what SaaS is software as a service. They've been able to sell it a lot better than without NFT. And so what it will look like, in just so you guys get an example of it. So let's say you buy a NFT pass, and you'll be able to use a specific software. As long as you have that, maybe you still have to pay an additional fee to actually use the software, but you need to have the pass to be able to even be in that ecosystem to use the software. Just like how Gary Vee does it with his restaurant. You need to hold the NFT to be able to go to that restaurant. You still have to pay for your like meals, but if you don't have the NFT, you can't even get it, right? So that's like another utility. And then also I think maybe another use case of it is verification. So everything needs to be verified, and especially for years to come. So let's say you've got your Gucci, Louis Vuitton, or like whatever, or let's say your AP watch, and you need to have a source of verification. So these like large companies, they're going to introduce NFTs as the means to make sure there's the final version of what they're selling is actually real. And that's, by the way, really big deal. Like in the fashion industry, really big deal. Like the largest companies that offer the most designer, like most expensive designer brands, they've been caught to actually sell like things that are fake. And so that's been a huge issue. And so NFT will actually solve a lot of that, where you hold the NFT, you have the version of the piece of clothing or watch or whatever that is true. That is the authentic version of it. So those are some of the use cases that they're going to use, not just because they want to stay relevant, but they actually need it. So these are actually like solving specific problems for them.
I want to piggyback off of Malcolm's question really quick. Do you foresee potentially startups using NFTs as a way to sort of crowdfund, as opposed to going the old route, which was going to a venture capitalist, trying to raise capital, and more so build a community and then build the business around that community with the NFTs?
100%. And we already see that to some extent with artists in the music industry. And so and also authors too. So that's also a thing. So for example, authors now, what they can do, they can actually have, let's say it's a specific chapter of their book, like it's a hidden chapter, or it's like a meet and greet with the author that you can only get if you own the NFT of the book. And or like maybe let's say the author will just like read it for you, like maybe the audible version that's just like read by the actual author, not like some voice artist, so on and so forth. So they're actually, and now same thing with music as well. Like the artist will directly give you the soundtracks and so on and so forth. So but the purpose of that is the connection between the artist, the creator, and then the receiver, meaning the fans, is actually is just becoming stronger, right? So the middleman is cut. Okay, and so for that reason, it's also just, it's not too far fetched to think, hey, startups could do the same. Like they could actually cut that like middleman in between, and then go directly to people, and don't need maybe angel investors anymore, right? I'm not saying they're not going to be needed, but I'm just saying like to some extent, they don't have to maybe give equity as much to someone who doesn't maybe even is not even fully invested in the company, but it's an angel investor for like 300 other startups. And in fact, instead of that, they could just have people support them. So that's actually a really big deal for companies. Just now, everything is just going to be community driven. So more so like just like how Kickstarters, work, or like crowdfunding. But I believe there's limit to that. So I think in the US, I don't know if it's the same in every countries, but in the US, you can only, I believe you can only crowdfund maybe like 5 million every week, so every year or something like that. And so, but then again, with the NFTs, that limit is also taken away. So you can do whatever you want at that point, right? So there's definitely use cases around actually having enough money to bring some ideas to life for now, whether it be the startups or just artists doing it.
Wouldn't that also draw in look, so let's say if there aren't any limitations on purchasing these NFT projects, let's say that a bigger businesses were to start up an NFT project, and let's say a huge crypto whale gets into it and decides to buy a vast majority of the NFTs they have in that market. Would it, at that point, because you're technically having a majority ownership in that product, would that limit that particular business's ability to be able to do anything with that, considering that majority ownership would be from a retail investor as opposed to a corporate investor?
That's a good point. The thing is, though, the concept is still there's a community behind it, right? So let's say if it's my NFT and you're a whale, you come in and buy all my NFTs. I still have a community built around it, so I can do another collection tomorrow. And unless you're gonna buy every collection that I have, I still have that power, right? I still have that freedom to continuously just drop NFTs, right? Versus in like let's say in a world where like it's actually you're the, like, let's say the whales are limited versus the creators are not. Like they can, because they have the community, at any point and any time they can just do another collection, they can do another drop, right? And not all collections have to be hand drawn or anything. They could just do it again, and just it could be similar to the previous one, then the community would still love it. So I think the biggest thing actually in the NFT community is actually literally just the community itself. It's not the art, it's not the utility. Well, they're very important, and that's what brings the community together, but it's the community that like is really your source of power. And so once you have it, you can do a lot of things. You can let's say you bought into some NFT that was like some version of, like, let's say lions, that like art. Now I'm gonna do like like tiger. You know what I mean? So like you don't have to like, I'm not limited because I have the community that trusts in me. It's not just my art. I can do whatever I want now, right?
Wow, that's amazing. See, I'm not very familiar with the community, the NFT community, so this is all like refreshing to hear because do NFTs offer more transparency, especially if there is a DAO attached to it? Because I'm not too familiar with DAOs, but does do you work with DAOs, and is there transparency there as well? If you place like an investment, you plan for it to generate revenue over a prolonged period of time?
Yeah, so DAOs, staking, and play to earn games, that's almost like the three things every NFT brand they're going to do this year. Like those are the most popular things everyone's going to do. And so they've already started. But I think also it's like important to figure out what they really like have strength on as opposed to just doing all. But a lot of people are actually doing it. Now, transparency, thankfully, is just amazing in the just because of the crypto wallets and just everything in the blockchain gets submitted and recorded. So it's very transparent. And then also I found that the community itself, because it's just built by the community, it's they're less likely to cut corners because it's just for themselves, right? So it's the community doing it for themselves. So they don't. There's not much. There's not many reasons for people in the community um, to just make shortcuts. So they do everything properly, at least to the points that I've seen, right? So when they want to decide, hey, like here's the money that we're gonna, let's say for a game, everything, like all the money that's just being let's say all the cryptos that are being generated from the play to earn games is go to some treasury, and then later on we're gonna like make the game better, or we're gonna maybe buy some other games, so on and so forth. It just happens to be, so far at least from projects I've seen, everything is just so transparent, everything is just so clear to people. There's been instances where founders, they miscalculate like how much they can deliver, and then when they communicate it to the community, then typically community is just very welcoming because they understand, like, it's like this is new to everyone. And so, but I think it's important as we go forward to not use that as an excuse, because sometimes also people just don't take the time to actually figure out like what's a sustainable DAO. Versus like just say, oh yeah, like this sounds really cool, like let's just do this, and everyone just puts their money here and then we'll do all these cool things. It's like, but really, like how is that working? Like let's say if you have like thousands of people doing this, so some stuff, like people just simply don't have the knowledge, because you got to think, most people in the NFT community, they're not really business people, they're artists, and so they're not necessarily knowing like what it's like to do business. The business operations side of things is typically a new thing for them, and so they learn it along the way, and because of that, people are very forgiving, and so they, but not to just get away with it, but it's very forgiving because they say, people, community is believing in that, like they're passionate, they want to do something good, so they want to let them try new things, make bold statements, but also just like back it up and help them to do it.
So that draws the question, being that there isn't much regulation on NFTs at this current moment, or at least I believe so, do you personally feel as though financial institutions like central banks or federal entities will try to enforce stringent regulations to control the flow of liquidity on decentralized marketplaces?
100%. 100%. They're already doing it. So the other day I was actually, so there's this organization. So I live in Canada. There's an organization where if you want to, let's say, convert USD to, so like US dollars to Canadian dollars, it's better to do it through this organization. It's a government based organization. It's better to do it through them versus a bank, for example, right? But they actually work with the banks. But it's funny. Like I went there and they were like, "Do you do anything to do with crypto?" I'm like, "Why?" And like, well, if you do, we cannot help you. I'm like, what? So they specifically ask people like where the source of income is, and if it's crypto, they don't want to be helpful. I've heard banks actually talk about this, where they don't want to be accepting of like if your source of income is from crypto, or they never said NFT, by the way. So I think NFT is so new to the banks themselves. They haven't caught on yet. But probably going to fall into the same category later on. And so they're already doing it. There's already a lot of pushback from banks, and understandably, because like we're going from centralized, owned by everything, owned and ruled by the banks and like a central, I guess, organization to people. And so obviously, they're not super excited about it. And by the way, to their defense, like I lost 100K. I had a wallet. I lost 100K. To their defense, there's some good things about banks as well. Like I don't think like banks are completely useless. Like I've never, to this date, I've never actually had money lost up until like I lost that 100K in a crypto wallet, and I can't get it back. Like there's no way I can get it back. If it was a bank, I could just call them, be like, hey, this 100K is gone. Actually, a lot of banks in the US, I used to live in the US, they would instantly credit it back into your account. And so that's also a cool thing. Like I think I don't want to just like talk negatively about banks all the time, because it's not the case. Like it's not. And we have a lot more responsibilities, a lot more to learn, a lot more to figure out. Quite honestly, every time I do like large transfer of like money from one crypto wallet to another crypto wallet, it's just really stressful. And so like I wish to, like, I wasn't doing it, like a bank was doing it, to be honest. But also like I understand that the freedom that we get with this, like I own this, right? The bank cannot just like take my money and just hold on to it. So
yeah, I think we're going to see a hybrid market develop. I don't think it's going to be completely decentralized. I don't think crypto is going to do away, or NFTs are going to do away with banking. I think that we're just going to see a lot of these crypto exchanges morph into the new banks. And like you said, to your point, I've lost money in crypto too, where I've sent, like, you send, even if it's just $100 or $1,000 to another wallet, and it takes 2 minutes to get there. Those 2 minutes can feel like forever, and you're like, come on, let's just confirm.
Yeah.
Because if you mess up, there's no going back, right?
Yeah.
So there is definitely comfort in the traditional banking system that I feel is sort of ignored in the crypto space. So it's sort of refreshing to hear that, because I know a lot of people in crypto, myself included, we're not very big, we're not really big on regulations, not really big on government overreach. We want to have our freedoms, want to be able to spend the money how we want to. But at the same time, there's a huge price with that. And I think a lot of times it causes unnecessary stress, because there's a lot of easier ways to do things. So
100%.
It's refreshing to hear somebody else in crypto.
Yeah, 100%. And also like obviously the first day was like really upsetting for me when I lost 100K. And the story of it, by the way, is on my Twitter. If people want to figure out like what happened, it's just literally just was trying to buy land and then connected my wallet and just like poof, 100K was gone. But the concept obviously is very important for people. So it's just us taking responsibility, right? So that's what it is. It's just like now we have to be accountable for things we didn't have to be accountable for. It's okay. Like we just gotta learn, and just understand. It's just, I think it's just like anything. It's just like driving a car. Like you sit in someone else's car, or like you drive your own car, and then you have to actually like abide by some maybe rules, not necessarily like a government rules, but at least just a rule so you don't crash, right? And so there's certain things you got to do, otherwise that doesn't work out. And what's even, I think that is, to me, that's okay. What's even more stressful, literally today, I was about to pay an influencer, and then I told someone from the team, I said, hey, here's the wallet, but don't send the money yet. Let me just quickly double check. I went to this person's YouTube channel and I clicked on their Twitter. I just wanted to make sure when I click on message on the Twitter, it actually reversed back into the conversation that I was having with this person on Twitter, and it didn't. And I realized it had an extra S in their name. Everything, this person has been doing this for impersonating this account for about a year, and has thousands of tweets, website, everything is exactly the same. And it's just like hanging in there. And I was literally about to pay this guy like 6K for just one video. And so when I saw it, I was like, oh, okay, don't send. I just deleted everything on the Discord to my team. And so it's like, don't send anything. This is fake, right? So that's also happening. Like in the influencer marketing, there's a lot of this. Like people just out of these 400 NFT projects, there's been hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that's gone to people that actually didn't have a following. Like they weren't influencers at all. they're just like hanging on the internet. And also, like, I think that's also another accountability, like, I guess another point of responsibility we're gonna have is just understand like how to deal with this. So like I could tell from the communication, because this guy was just like, there's certain things an influencer would ask, he wasn't asking, and I was just like, that's weird. And then for example, he didn't need to vet the projects a lot, and for the size of following he had, that's sometimes strange. And then there were like a few things where like in the communication I was like, why is he following up with me? He's supposed to have like so many people like messaging him. So like things like that where I was like, this may not be real. And then we checked, of course it wasn't. And he was still actually, to like literally an hour ago, he was still messaging me like, have you sent them money? It's like, no, we're not going to send money. So yeah,
that breaches a lot of security. I guess that draws in a lot of concerns for those that are getting into this field, like myself personally as well. Like I will tell you, Luis knows, I I get scammed through crypto.
yeah.
So when Richard Hart put out the address for what was it, the Pulse Chain sacrifice?
PulseX.
Yeah. There's a community on Telegram that I'm still in, and I probably should get out of it. I don't even read it anymore. So they put in a lot of links and saying this is where you can sacrifice to. I was like, bet, I'm down. And I put like $5,000. I did 1,500 first, and then like the remainder at the address there, the address that they disseminated in the group chat, and then I confirmed with Luis, and he was like, "Yo, you ain't send nothing to the right address." I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, you didn't send. You got scammed." I was like, "Oh,
yeah, that hurts." Because that's like, for some people that's literally the only thing they've done, and like that's like the first thing they do, and then maybe that's like literally the last thing, because that would be the end of their interaction with the entire NFT and crypto community. So that's really sucks. Sorry to hear. Yeah,
Tether. This is the one good thing about Tether. It's a bad thing, but it's a good thing.
Yeah.
I guess in how it functions, you are able to reverse a transaction if you send it to the wrong wallet. I guess that
really?
It's so centralized.
I like that. Yeah.
There's an ability to reverse it. Now there's a lot of bad things about Tether too, but it's a good thing, and I think that we're going to see that a lot more in stable coins and probably NFTs. I'm not really too sure because there really are different beasts entirely, NFTs and cryptocurrency. I mean, they both can have smart contracts and things like that, but just totally different use cases.
100%.
So do you see any, I don't even know if this makes sense, but like stable NFTs, something analogous to a stable?
Honestly, to me, like, so I actually traded a lot of NFTs. I hold a ton. And so to me, I really look for people and teams, because to me, that's just, they're going to figure it out. They're not going to let people down. Like that's the thing that I go for. And I would say I have a good read on people. So that's how I like really invest on projects most of the time. Of course, it's like, if you want to trade, like if you're just flipping NFTs, you can go find like alphas from one place or another place, or like just look at the Discord, and if they're sell out. I mean, I probably have the best alphas because I just know the day before if they're gonna sell out. Right. But to hold on to a specific NFT, to me, it's just like their team. If you see that they're legit, they're docs, they're going to really, they're talking about what they're going to do next 5 years, 10 years. And there are only like a few that are actually talking about those things. Most of them, they have like, there's zero conversation about like what they're going to do 5 years. They almost themselves don't believe it. They don't want to bring it up, right? So they don't want to bring it up. It's like, babe, we're actually thinking like this is going to last like maybe 6 months. And so I think that, and then also land, just buying land, whatever that is, like whichever metaverse. I think to me, those are the most stable things out of all. And nothing is stable. So, right. But yeah.
Well, before we get out of here, I want to ask you what you can tell the audience and those who will watch this in the future what are some things that they should, if they're interested in? I guess two questions for those interested in making NFTs. What are some things that they need to consider before they start an NFT? What are some of the, we kind of covered it before, some of the behind the scenes stuff that may be overlooked initially. And then secondly, I know this isn't financial advice. This is totally entertainment purposes.
Yeah.
But for somebody who's looking to get into NFTs, what would you recommend they look at in a project in order to maybe, get a sense if this project's a scam, a rug pull? So just those two things.
Yeah. So second question, as far as like projects to look for, I would, there are a lot of projects that are actually giving away free NFTs. So really low entry, get involved and just see what it's like. Obviously, don't just go immediately list it because then you ruin that brand. But the concept of like, I think that's actually a very important point. Like if you get free NFTs, like the point is like you actually be supportive of the community. It's not just to be like, hey, even if I make like $100 profit, it's $100 profit, right? But you could potentially do that if you want to. And so you can start from those and then just understand things better as by doing things, because things happen so fast. Even if someone goes on pick up a book, they may not get the knowledge that they need, right? So it's just everything is just changing so fast. Like so I have a program where I teach people literally how to do this NFT marketing, and I shot this videos maybe like beginning of November. Halfway through November, someone on my Discord wrote, your course is outdated. I'm like, what are you talking about? This was like 2 weeks ago. I shot these videos. And to the point, there was some like targeting on Facebook and Instagram. Like you could target interest of cryptocurrency, Ethereum, Bitcoin on Facebook and Instagram. You cannot do it anymore. Right. So they just went away. So things are changing so fast. And that's for marketing, and it's also for buying NFTs. It's just the knowledge that you can get is best to be just by doing things, because there's some understanding you get, but also they can just understand what has been true, in the past, the history of things, and so on and so forth. So I would say that, and then just joining also some alpha groups. So there are Discords out there. There are Telegram groups out there that they're giving you alphas, and if they're good and you trust them and they're reputable, so that's typically helpful. Just get your foot in the in the way, establish yourself, and then. So that's as far as the buying NFTs. That's how I like to look at, and also understanding. By the way, NFT marketing is just really helpful to understand if a project is going to sell out or not, and that's a really good indicator if someone should actually invest in an NFT project. Because if they're not going to sell out, typically they're not going to just magically come up with money to deliver lots of like bold promises they had on the roadmap, right? So it just doesn't happen. So if so that it's likely to become a rock pull, or it's likely that just say, hey, sorry, we're not going to do it, right? So so that's important. But as far as marketing, I think biggest thing I would say, just I guess a few things. One is like, this is a full-time thing. It's not a side hustle. This is something that requires investment. So if you don't have an investment, either reduce your collection size significantly, just do like 100 instead of 10,000 or 20,000. So just have 100 NFTs, sell it, make money, and then now do a larger collection, right? So that's very important. And then also just have great people on your team. I think that's very important. By the way, OpenSea, I believe they actually offer to invest in NFT projects. Magic Eden, they have their launchpad. So just like look for resources like that. If you don't have a lot of money to invest, just look for resources like that. Use those until you do, right? But the concept of, I think, treating this as just like just see what happens, that's not a very helpful mindset. But also like concept of saying, hey, I don't want to invest anything from my pocket into this. I just want some magical like ways of like organically somehow get people so excited that they're just going to buy out this whole NFT collection of mine. And then maybe like once they do that, then I'll actually go and finally figure out what I'm going to deliver. Like that's not a good mindset. So instead, it's better to just like look for investors if you don't have money for actually marketing your NFT project. I think that's that's a really solid idea. And then just be just have like methodologies that actually going to help building the communities. So like if your community is not built, like don't go launch. There's no point. Like it's not like I've seen this so many times. Literally, like today I just sold one brand. I specifically told them like do not launch. Like don't drop this NFT. This is not going to be successful. You don't have the numbers, and they still do it because they're like, well, we've worked so hard. It's like that doesn't mean like you got to drop your NFT just because you worked so hard. So I think the next point is like just that business experience is missing. So have an advisor or have someone who is just, even the small businesses, they know better, you know, like how businesses run. It's not like if you're tired, that doesn't mean you do certain things because you're tired, right? Or like if you're exhausted, like you don't want to do anymore, like that doesn't mean you stop, right? So certain things like that, I think if people pay attention to, they would market themselves a lot better and create better projects, less rug pulls, happier people in the community, less reasons for like random governments or organizations to come in and regulate the hell out of everything. And so like, and then better for everyone, you know, I think that's just will be a better place. So.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Learned a lot, especially as far as what goes on behind the scenes in these NFT projects. And I'm sure you will probably grow in popularity. I see that you're coming up all over the place, man. And you're really trying to get your face out there, your voice out there. And I wish you the best of luck. So thank you again for coming on the show.
Yes, of course. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Yep.